Well, you should have purchased a proper cloak. You did realize rain was a distinct possibility, didn't you? Fine. Use mine. Is that better? Good. No, don't worry about me. I'm something of a pluviophile. I like to close my eyes and look up. The coolness of the droplets is soothing on my eyelids. You know where we're going. I told you before we set out. Why don't you tell me what you know about this Elven realm? You've certainly got the basics. Surrounded by mountains, secretive, dominated by elves and dwarves, only one obvious geographic point of entry. We're not taking a ship because that's the obvious course. Whoever wrote that note we found will certainly have influence in Kildaras, and our appearance would tip them off that their hired rat was sloppy. Yes, that would be a bad thing. In fact, the lack of response from the rat, or even my absence from Rhaethim, assuming any others were watching, the owl were fine, watching me. We're likely approaching the point where we're no longer ahead of our target. Well, that means we'll need to be inconspicuous if we encounter anyone on our track, at least until we're in trusted company. You're right. Spies usually don't trust anyone. But I've got one or two friends that can be relied upon. We'll meet them when we cross into the Selvan realm. Where else? The Thundershire Mountains are a natural deterrent for potential invaders, but that doesn't mean there aren't ways to pierce their veil. There's a network of concealed outposts throughout the range, known as Vandragrak, or Guard's Vantage, that rather obviously keep watch over the surrounding lands. We're headed to the southwestern edge, where we'll likely meet soldiers of both nations, as well as one of my friends. The friend I mean will most likely be the Hunter, or perhaps the Shadow. Let's hope we're met by the Shadow, now that I think of it. Because she's actually rather pleasant to be around. Soothing, even. You'll see what I mean if she's there. And don't worry if she's not. If we're met by the Hunter, there will be few words exchanged. Because the Hunter cannot speak. It's a grisly story that's not mine to tell. I've already said too much again. I'll tell you more about the Elven realm if it'll keep you quiet. Thank you. Storytellers often say of the Elven realm that there are many mysteries in this land of elves and dwarves. They're not wrong, but the mystique is oversold, if you ask me. The elves live in the valleys and forests under the rule of the Silurian throne. And the dwarves live beneath the mountains under the rule of the Earthroot clan. Both nations work together in a delicate balance and have done so for, by now, thousands of years. The dwarves are the original inhabitants of the region, as the elves migrated from across the Luinor. The Luinor? No, I'm sorry. I'm just surprised that a historian is unaware of what the elves call the ocean to the east of their realm. Directly translated, it means wide blue. Elves aren't particularly creative with names, merely blessed with a particularly euphonious language. Luinor. You see? Anyway, the elves migrated from across the Luinor thousands of years ago, making their first landfall on the tiny peninsula where Kelderas now stands watch over the mouth of the Quithduin, the life-giver. It's the river that runs down the center of the Thundajir Mountains. Thundajir means the warding mountains, alright? Anyway, the Quithduin is the source of the fertile soil and verdant forests in the many valleys. On traveling up the river, seeing the strength of such ancient forests, the abundance of life, the elves knew they'd found their new home. It wasn't long before the first discovery of the dwarves, and from the first interaction, the two peoples have worked together to preserve and protect the landscape from the surrounding world. No, there are all manners of beings beyond just elves and dwarves that live there. It's just that theirs are the two predominant cultures, both of which are a bit aloof and protective, which to some comes off as ostracizing. You'll find the most variety in Kelderas, the austere city, as it were, which serves not only as a military and naval base, but as the primary hub for commerce and cultural exchange with the world outside. It's almost an embassy for this elven realm, but they placed it at their front door. Now that I think on it, it comes off as almost culturally agoraphobic. Humans? No, they're not particularly rare. What is uncommon is seeing a human at any station of prominence in terms of governing, for the elves at least. Their culture is a highly courteous one, but not an overly welcoming one. They largely share the view that in terms of making decisions of governance, such stations are withheld by history and heritage. As an example, you'd never see a human on the ruling council as one of the 6 lords or ladies of the kindreds. Suffice it to say that while each elven kindred is overseen by a member of that elven family, the kindreds act as institutions that are in charge of different spheres of influence in the function of the society. There are members of all races who serve the kindreds, but their leaders are strictly of the elven bloodlines that founded each kindred. As an example, Lord Valeris of the Galtheon kindred is, for now, the last scion of his bloodline, and in order to maintain the cultural function of the Galtheon kindred, there are many members of different races who travel the realm and conduct the... Well, when there is a funeral, after the appropriate religious rites are conducted for the individual, and the soul moves on, a servant of the Galtheon kindred will take the body to a grove for that family and give it back to the soil by planting a tree over it. The Galtheon kindred maintain nature's unique balance of death being recycled back into life. I don't know if that was the best example, but suffice it to say that there are human members of the Galtian kindred, even if it is the smallest of the kindreds. I did get sidetracked for a moment there, yes. No, I'm not distracted, I'm just... Anyway. Yes, you could find a few human settlements in the valleys, but they're rare and usually involved in agricultural work. The more traditional elves view the seeping of humans into the interior of the realm as a relaxing of certain standards. The view is rare, but it is sadly present. The change has only begun to manifest within the last century and a half or so, under the rule of Queen Talia. Me? Yes, I'm a half-elf, but we're not talking about me. Yes, half-elves are. They exist in the Sylvan realm. They're... Well, overall, they're viewed rather like humans. They live, they work, they love, they die. I would say that for humans there is something of a glass ceiling. You might see a human of prominence in Kelderas, a wealthy business person or noble from another land, even visiting royalty, but for humans born to Kelderas, you'd never see one at the head of the table, as it were. The different connotation for half-elves is that the glass ceiling is more like stone. To see a half-elf born of the Sylvan realm at the head of the table would be unthinkable. In fact, for the elf at the head of the table to sire or bear a half-elf child would be disqualifying. No, half-elves aren't unwelcome, they're just tolerated, oft overlooked. Your insight is as disarming as ever, it seems. I haven't been to the Sylvan realm for a very long time, and it's by what I believe to be necessity that I'm returning. No, I'm not going to tell you my suspicions. I won't elaborate on shadowy plots when I know nothing for certain. That kind of speculation is dangerous. Once we get to Vantragrak and meet my friend, then we'll head to Kalkravindus, home of the Crystal Academy and the primary center for the arcane learning of the dwarves. That's where we'll be able to find some resources to teach you more magic than I'm able to. Maybe even a recommendation for a teacher. No, I'm not going to tell you about Typhane. Go back to practicing. I'm going to go enjoy the rain.